song. Is it?
Anyway.
My name is Dr. Hayleigh Bosher. I'm a senior lecturer in intellectual property law at Brunel University in London, and I've just finished writing a book called Copyright in the Music Industry, which was the inspiration for this podcast, really, where we decided to get people from the music industry themselves to talk with myself and Jules about copyright and the importance for copyright to musicians.
My name is Jules and I'm a partner at Sound Advice in Talyard. I'm a specialist music lawyer. I've been doing that kind of stuff for about the past decade, but I've also had a 35-year career in the music business, very much distinguishing my artistic identity, which is Judge Jules, from my lawyer identity, where I'm not a judge, but I am a solicitor. I've done many, many different things in the music industry, from being an artist. I've released countless records. I've been a manager, been an agent, been an A&R, and been an event promoter at a high level. So I kind of come at things from all angles. Here's hoping I know as much about copyright as I do about all those other things, but I wouldn't promise.
Hi, and I'm Crispin Hunt. I'm a songwriter and a record producer. I used to be the lead singer in a Britpop band called Long Pigs. I also kind of dabble in the kind of politics of the music industry, in that I'm an elected director of PRS, and actually today was my last day of being an elected director of PPL. I stood down in order to hopefully let somebody more diverse than me take my place on the board. I'm also, it's my great honour to be chair of something called the Ivors Academy, which is the sort of biggest trade body in Britain representing songwriters and composers and lyricists. And we campaign and fight for the workers' rights, because, you know, I always think that singing is crying for adults, really. But we got together and we got hold of one of these lists called the Who's Looking list that the publishers put out, and they say useful briefs like kind of Rihanna wants similar global dance floor smash hits like her past ones. And we came across this thing for Lee Ryan from Blue, who wanted George Michael meets Rod Stewart, and we thought, oh, this looks fun. And I'm ashamed to say we sort of took the piss for an afternoon and wrote this track, which you know, I thought was probably not going to go anywhere, called Army of Lovers, and we sent it off, and it went to number 3 in England, and number 1 in Italy, and number 1 in Germany, and then I sort of had a sort of pop epiphany. Rather than trying to be in a kind of cool left of centre style art band, I suddenly realised that actually if I could get 20% of art to 10 million people, it felt a lot better than getting 100% of art to 100,000 people. So and then I started writing lots of songs for other people, and I've been really lucky. I've worked with some amazing artists, people like Florence and the Machine and Ellie Goulding and Jake Bugg, and I've worked for Lana Del Rey, and I've worked for numerous other people.
So if you say you start from the nucleus of a very small idea and you've got a kind of bank of those ideas, are you ever mindful of the fact that those ideas might have been inspired from somewhere else, and there might potentially be some sort of subliminal infringement or subliminal copying going on?
Of course, I used to be really strict about that. I used to be very disappointed when I realized that one of my ideas was actually somebody else's idea. And I am quite strict with myself, but with other people, I mean, this is where copyright gets into a kind of dangerous territory. There was a lovely song that I wrote with a brilliant Irish artist, and she came up with this amazing chorus, but it was a Jimi Hendrix song. But I don't think she knew that it was a Jimi Hendrix song. I think she just had come up with the same melody, or maybe somewhere way in the distance, it was a similar. She would have recognized it and dredged it from her subconscious. But I don't think that is kind of appropriation. I think that's imitation, and I think that's part of the kind of shared process of creativity that we all have.
And also, I think there's actually quite a lot of research from psychology that talks about this whole idea. I think it's called crypto amnesia. It's the idea that you can recall a memory without realizing that you're recalling a memory. You genuinely believe that you've come up with an original idea. And actually, there was a case against George Harrison. Do you know where he was sued for copyright infringement? And of course, the songs are almost exactly the same. And his evidence was, yeah, I've heard that song before. And if I copied it, it was completely unconsciously, and I didn't realize at all that that's what I was doing. And unfortunately, in copyright law, not knowing that you were doing it is not a defense, and so it was found to be infringing. So, and I think this is a really interesting area of copyright law in terms of creation, because it's such a fine line to tread between inspiration and originality. Because, like you said, it's a part of the creative process is drawing on other people's work. Even earlier, you mentioned about when someone's asking you to create a song with them or for them, they give you other artists as a way to describe what sound they're looking for and what kind of vibe the song is about. And I think
it's all about kind of crediting, giving credit where credit's due. And that, you know, they're in your wonderful playlist of things that sound like lots of other things. It goes on to, you know, you talk about amen breaks and all of those things, which are, you know, if you are going to kind of have a transformative use of somebody else's work, you just have to credit them and pay them. It's all a collaboration. You shouldn't sort of pass it off as your own. But I was almost going to say that thing, have all the ideas been written and you're bound to kind of come up with the same one. But I don't believe that by any means. I think there can be fractions of other people's work that go into it. And I think in my understanding of musicologists or copyright law, it's 7 or 8 identical notes that count as infringement.
I've heard that in different forms from lots of different creators. From a legal perspective, it's not actually that accurate, because it's all about the quality of what you take, not the quantity. It's what 8 notes you take rather than if you take 8 notes. And actually, there was that Katy Perry case recently, I don't know if you saw it in the news, where there was a copyright infringement claim against her that basically boiled down to an 8-note ostinato. And first it was found to be infringing, and then on appeal after the Led Zeppelin case, it was the appeal was allowed and it wasn't an infringement. And I think this is quite a common misconception for creators, that there is a certain amount of, whether it's music or actually in other areas of creativity as well, that you can take legally from others. But really, from at least my understanding, is that it's more about what you take, the quality of what you take. And it actually links back to the whole idea thing that you're saying about how that there are ideas that should be in the public domain for everybody to use. It's that person's individual expression of that idea and how their personal experience of the world and how they write music and how, you know, I love the thing you said about singing is crying for grown-ups. Like, their emotional experience is their song. And if you take those parts, the really original parts of the song, then it can be 1 note, it can be 1 second sample, and it's infringement. It doesn't actually mean 7 notes okay is not. So I just thought
that's useful to know as a standard. I mean, Jules was talking about how in Germany, you know, not having a re-recording right forever is a kind of norm. But norms are pretty much always applied retrospectively in order to justify misconduct in the first place. And then everyone gets away with it for a while and they say, oh no, that's just the norm, where everyone does this. And so we shouldn't just take norms as the status quo. The status quo only exists as long as it's unchallenged. And really it's an artist's job to challenge those status quo, which brings us back to kind of politics.
Yeah, and my favourite quote from Cinderella, which says, just because it's what's done doesn't mean it's what should be done.